Good morning, Beacon. My name is Missy Rogers, and I am your worship associate today. I am a white woman with salt and pepper hair, wearing glasses, and a very autumn-colored cape this morning. Welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist congregation. Unitarian Universalism is a faith that places love at the center, guided by the faithful practice of justice, interdependence, equity, pluralism, generosity, and transformation. Thank you for spending time with us. After our service, we welcome you to connect with Chris Budin, who is right there in the back. If you don't know Chris, that's the person you want to see. He's our membership coordinator who can guide you in a brief tour of our space and answer any questions you have. For those joining us online, please fill out the connection form that will appear in the chat in just a moment. We are centering in the practice of deep listening and compassion this day. We continue with song.
Good morning. My name is Nisa Iwama, and I'm the Director of Music Ministry. I'm here with John O'Neill on piano. We're both really happy to be here today, and we're going to start with number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness. And I invite you to rise in any way possible and join in singing.
Good morning, beloveds. I'm Reverend Robin. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of the lead ministry team here. I am a shorter white woman wearing an autumnal colored stole that is woven. The following are the words of Rabbi Brant Rosen. They're intended for the beginning of Shabbat, which usually begins on Friday evening at sunset. It's a time of Sabbath, of sacred rest and reflection. And we are going to use these words at the beginning of our service in a kind of Sabbath on Sunday morning. And we will use them to kindle the light of our chalice rather than Shabbat candles. I want to invite someone forward as we do so. Is there a volunteer who'd like to light our chalice this day? Thanks, Nancy. It's okay. Here we go. There you go. There we go. Thank you. Blessed is the light that illumines the path to Olam Haba, the world to come.
Where bombs falling from above have long since melted into the spreading calm of a distant horizon. Where the dispossessed and expelled have no other memories than the softness of arms reaching to welcome them home. Blessed is the light that shows us the way forward, and blessed is Shabbat, this moment, filling us endlessly with the vision of a world liberated, inspiring us with the strength to make it so. My name is Kathy Menendez. She, hers. Pardon?
We'll wait for oh, there we are. Oh. Once again, I am Kathy Menendez. And I am, for the visually impaired, I'm a shorter, older, white woman with blonde hair wearing navy blue and a burgundy scarf, which, as you know by now, indicates I'm a member of the chaplain team here at Beacon. Chaplains extend the spiritual care of our community, and we define spiritual care as intentional compassion through presence and listening. And of course, we keep all conversations strictly confidential. Chaplains also facilitate our weekly ritual of community candle lighting, and together we light candles of joy, sorrow, and gratitude. This morning, we light a candle to honor and wish Shana Tova for all those who honor and enter into the high holy days in Jewish communities, including within UU communities. A candle of witness, knowing that the anniversary of the massacre of Israel is tomorrow, October 7th. We hold the pain and fear within Israel and Jewish communities with this candle. All the unmet, unheard, unrecognized grief that ripples out as hostages are still held, others murdered but unable to be buried, and those who have returned with great trauma. We weep at this devastating assault and atrocity on October 7th and the thousands of Israelis murdered. A candle of witness as the war between Israel and Hamas now extends into Lebanon and with Iran. We weep again at the 42,000 Palestinians murdered and the Lebanese who were murdered. May our own government find the courage to stand equally opposed to far-right leaders and terrorists. All the unmet, unheard, and unrecognized grief that ripples out to Lebanese, Palestinian, and Muslim members of our communities here. A candle of mourning for Kay Escobar, an organizer, student, and activist close to our Beacon community, whose memorial after their sudden death was held this past week. Light honoring incredible life. A candle for all those in the path of Hurricane Helene, especially those devastated in western North Carolina. We see you, beloveds, and with this light, commit to not look away, but to shine the light of aid and attention until life is restored and repaired. A candle for each and all receiving these words who are deep in grief right now. We kindle this enduring light for you and offer our companionship. If you are among those with grief, I invite you to place your hand on your heart. And if you are online, to put a heart or the word love in the chat. And finally, a candle of celebration for the life that endures and even flourishes, for the climate justice revivals that took place last weekend in UU congregations all over the country, for the beloveds who are welcoming to new life, coming into relationships and unions, and transitioning into new homes. If you are among those celebrations, I invite you to place your hand on your heart now. And if you are online, to put a confetti symbol or the word joy in the chat. For this and for so much more, we invite you to come forward now to light a candle here in our sanctuary, or at home, or wherever you may be.
morning. My name is Laura Kramer. I'm a mostly gray, white-haired woman of a certain age. And the poem I will be reading today is called "The Shofar Breaks Your Heart." When you give a girl a shofar, no, not a proper instrument of God, but a rough-cut horn with no real mouthpiece her aunt brings back from a trip to Jerusalem, don't make it easy. Put it up on the shelf in the living room where its curled promise of a shout will tempt her until she can reach it on tiptoe. Tell her no one has ever found its voice, that she will only make it grunt, bray, and sputter like the animal it came from. Then give her a few years. Give her an empty garage and a neighborhood Jewish enough to understand what it's hearing, so she can practice until tiny tikkiyot burst forth from the scrap of ram. She will be the only one who can ever shape its sound, can bend the call to tikkiyah, round off 9 drops of teruah, wailing, fling the anguish cry of a shivarim from its mouth. Let her brag about this. Remember that children are not humble creatures, that the simple act of being heard is their great triumph. Let her be heard. Bring her to Hebrew school. Teach her the story of the rabbi who told his students that they would put the words of Torah on their hearts, that the words would only find their way in when the students' hearts broke. Let her sit with that tale for as long as it takes, for her own heart to shatter, for Torah and poetry and forgiveness find their way inside. Play her Leonard Cohen. Let him croon about the cracks in everything. That's how the light gets in. Let her begin searching for light. Ask her where she thinks the cracks came from. Give her Auschwitz, give her Torquemada, give her pogrom and quota and blacklist, the ashes of all her burnt bridges. Give her Avinu Malkeinu, Ashamnu, Ashamnu, Ashamnu. Watch her break her heart with her fist. Give her the shofar. Let the horns steal her breath. Let her begin to understand that she's not holding a dead piece of animal, but a living prayer. Teach her, after every blast, you can hear the echo of the still, small voice. If you listen for it, you can hear the calls for the wild cries they are. Salute them with a straight back when they yank from you your Amida. And should you hear a shofar blower struggle and gasp and strain for each call, imagine yourself a trapped animal desperate to be heard. When it's over, close your eyes. Be broken here before God and your people. Be cracked. Feel the light and the words come in.
We're going to sing number 1032, Dauna Naish. This piece has lyrics by a Muslim writer who invited a Jewish composer to set them to a tune. And the translation is at the bottom of the page. Let us live in peace. Let us live in inner peace. Let us weave our dreams together. Let us die in peace. Would you please rise in any way possible so that we can sing this prayer together?
Good morning. My name is Kira Pritchard. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an average height white woman with shoulder length blonde hair tied back in a bun, wearing a blue and white jumpsuit with a beige cardigan, and whose belly now enters the room before I do, as I'm 31 weeks pregnant.
And I'm Alex Pritchard. I use he, him pronouns. I'm 5'10" on a good day. White complexion, brown hair, wearing a white button-up long-sleeve shirt and maroon pants. As Kira said, we are blessed to be expecting our first child, and they're our biggest reason for bringing us here to Beacon. Kira and I got married in November 2023, and we were aware we wanted to start our family shortly after. As we discussed the kinds of things we wanted to do for ourselves and the kinds of parents we wanted to be, we kept coming back to the desire of finding a faith community based in love and acceptance where we could raise our little ones.
I grew up as an Army brat who attended non-denominational, vanilla-flavored Christian services. On military bases, you had the Catholic service and the everyone else service, while Alex grew up Presbyterian. Each of us found ourselves having deeper questions about our respective faith traditions as we got older, and finding conflict in what we were being preached versus what we believed.
So, in February 2024, when Kira told me she found a faith community that seemed to align with her own beliefs, we decided to come and check it out. We loved the messaging around our interconnectedness with everyone and everything in the world, the focus on loving one another and showing that love through activism of all kinds, and the belief that all faith traditions can contain learnings and truth.
We've been coming back ever since, including on a handful of Sundays through the live stream, and always walk away feeling renewed and inspired. We found the community we've been searching for, and we're so excited to raise our little family in a place of love and acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kira and Alex, for sharing your story with us, and moreover, for sharing your journey with us. We are so grateful you've joined Beacon. And with a gratitude that overflows the heart this day, our morning offering will now be most gratefully received.
Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn and reborn. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn and reborn. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Hadish, Hadish, Yaminu Kekedem. return to the land of your soul.
Thank you so much, Misa. Thank you, John. At first glance, beloved, the shofar is a humble instrument. It can be large, extended, almost like a trumpet, or small, barely bigger than my hand. Made from a ram's horn, if you didn't know what it was, it would be easy to think it's some kind of relic that belongs on a shelf gathering dust in a museum. But once you've heard the sound of the shofar, you know that it was made to be used. Sometimes a triumphant declaration, at other times a sound of mourning. It can take the form of a call to war as easily as it can call one into quiet self-reflection. And spoiler alert, I am not going to pull a shofar out and play it. That is not in my skill set, I know. But I promise you can find many far better examples than I would provide this morning if you only look to YouTube. And if you can get past the rawness of someone in front of you saving their breath to push it through the horn of a ram, if you listen, the sound of the shofar is also a call to justice. On Monday, I got off the train at Union Station in Washington, D.C., and I quickly snaked my way through the crowds on the platform and slid into a black Kia with a strawberry-scented car deodorizer. Oh well. 12 minutes later, I arrived in Lafayette Square. I put on the woven stole that I now wear, a gift from Reverend Cheryl M. Walker, and I placed my single bag down under the eave because the drizzle had started and I could no longer see out my glasses. I moved quickly because the prayer gathering that I was there to speak at had already begun, and the much taller than me, Pastor Alvin Jackson, was at the podium. It was then, only then, from the rush of a 7 a.m. train that I kind of settled in and exhaled and looked around me, took stock of my surroundings. And I listened carefully for where I was in the order of prayers. I'm behind the imam, I said. I'm behind the imam, don't forget. To my right was that imam dressed in white. Just behind my shoulder, Reverend Abi Janamanshi, the Unitarian Universalist minister in Cedar Lane, Maryland, who gave me a knowing smile of that rush that carries one in when you just make it. And to my left was a rabbi who graciously had stepped aside and out of the camera frame to make room for me. We were gathered to offer prayers and calls to action for this election. As I settled into my spot and took note of my place, I realized how tightly packed we were into this vestibule, in part because of the drizzle. We were so tightly packed that you could smell the soaps and detergents each person utilized that morning. We were so tightly packed that any time a speaker went to the podium, we all had to kind of do this movement. And it was as the rabbi made her way to the podium that I noticed something I couldn't have seen before, which was she carried a shofar, just slightly larger than her hand. Carrying that shofar just days with her before Rosh Hashanah said something about her commitment to justice, to interfaith organizing, and to the kind of world we were building together. And sure enough, Rabbi Jenny Rosen from Dayenu, a Jewish call to climate action, spoke with clarity about the interlocking injustices, the climate crisis, the devastating impact of Hurricane Helene, systemic racism, and systemic poverty. And at the conclusion of her words, she invited us to listen to the shofar blast. She said, really hear it. It is a call to awaken to the world. And maybe because she emphasized it like that, like really hear it, I stopped thinking about what I was going to say in just a few minutes. And I really heard it. If you listen, the shofar is a call to justice. The shofar is also a cry of mourning. I logged into online services this year for Rosh Hashanah. Normally, I would go to a colleague's community, somewhere local. But this year, I had just gotten home from a memorial for a young organizer and brilliant light who died far too young, tragically. And my wife, Anne-Marie, is recovering from foot surgery, and so the most sensible place from which to gather wisdom this high holy days was YouTube. I heard from the rabbi about how many Jewish Americans feel abandoned in their grief and fear since October 7th, which is tomorrow. And in a moment, I recalled so many conversations and my own silence, too. I remembered the response on social media and the denials that even many of my friends and colleagues received. And then the rabbi said, unreceived, unheard grief becomes trauma. After joining that service, I turned to UU sources. I watched Reverend D.L. Helfer speak of this, a member of UU's for Justice in the Middle East and a Jewish Unitarian Universalist, in a recent video as they spoke about their struggle to be in Jewish spaces, to be in UU spaces, to understand what Rosh Hashanah means this year. It is that time in the Jewish calendar for reflection and return, as Misa sang. For some, a return to God, for others, a return to oneself, to the still small voice, and yet for others, a return to community. It is a time for casting away things that we do not want to carry into the new year. And as we turn to the holiest days, for Jews, including Jewish Unitarian Universalists, for many, it is a time of atonement, forgiveness, starting a new year. I heard Reverend D.L. Helfer's sadness in the voices of some of our members of Beacon. I hear it with Jewish friends and colleagues and family. They are afraid of the rising anti-Semitism, of the abject indifference to their emotions, and for some, like Reverend D.L. Helfer, because of their anguish cries for Gaza and their critique of Netanyahu, they have been expelled from communities they once called home. And it is hard for the most powerful ritual of the year, which is deeply about reflection and returning and casting away, to be occurring this year just days before the anniversary of October 7th, the massacre and the devastation that followed in Gaza. It is said on Rosh Hashanah, it is written on Yom Kippur, it is sealed, and whether we choose to or not, beloved, something will be written in this time. And some things will be sealed forever, no matter how hard we try to undo them later. No matter how much we wished we had done differently. So much as I did not want to listen this year, not receive one more drop of the world's sorrow, ignoring reality, well, it only magnifies trauma. And all of this is in my heart as the shofar began that service. A bleated cry of anguish, a call to war, a call to cease, a warning, a stop what you are doing, a haunting reminder of all that is lost forever. If you listen, the shofar is also a call to worship. From Mount Sinai forward, the shofar has called people into sacred space in the heart and mind when a physical space was not possible. And when words have failed, the ram's horn across the centuries gave guttural articulation to that which was ineffable. The poet puts it this way, as read by Laura: give her the shofar, let the horn steal her breath, let her begin to understand that she's not holding a dead piece of animal, but a living prayer. Teach her after every blast, you can hear the echo of the still, small voice. So what is the solution in this moment? What does that voice say? What does the shofar speak across these centuries and continents and cultures? What can we know is true? If we are a faith that puts love at the center, as we say we do, then I think, as Paul Tillich teaches, the first duty of love is to listen. We are not international peace negotiators, at least I'm not. But I don't think we need to be international peace negotiators in order to be peacemakers in our communities and world. And I use that language intentionally. We used to talk about peacekeepers. It's not enough to be a peacekeeper anymore because there's not enough peace to keep. We need to make more peace. We need to be peacemakers. And peacemakers, they practice the spiritual discipline of listening, such that when a beloved says they are frightened, that they want all the hostages to be returned, that they need a safe place to go, and that is a Jewish state, we listen. We listen not to affirm a public policy or to make a vote then and there on international decisions, but we listen to understand a beloved's lived experience. Can we listen and remember the anniversaries and consider the impact of each bomb, each new threat, each day without a beloved returned? And we listen to our beloveds who are telling us of rising Islamophobia right here. Our Palestinian American beloveds, including just a few towns away in Patterson, who are weeping as their entire family has been wiped out, murdered. Generations of loved ones collapsed in a moment in the rubble. Futures gone. And just as we do not interrupt listening to justify the massacre of October 7th, we ought not to dismiss the anguish cries of those whose entire community, entire way of life, entire family, entire future story and culture lays in rubble at this moment, who are starving and thirsty and dying. Let us not argue about the number of Palestinians dead, or, dear God, how many of them are children. Can we try not to rank and compete suffering? Can we say that plainly there is terror now in Lebanon and in Israel? Can we listen to the truths? Can we be courageous enough to listen past one dimension and hear moral teachings that threaten some of our own ideologies and assumptions? Here's what I'm hearing when I listen. Whoever saves one life saves the world entire, from the Talmud. And by consequence, whoever takes one life destroys the world entire. If you listen, the sound of the shofar is the sound of all of us. Unpolished, raw, grieving, exhausted, bleeding, triumphant, and crying out to be heard. I think we know what happens if we stop listening. Can we be courageous enough to listen deeply without defense and calculating what we're going to say? Or has the sacred practice of listening become politicized too? Of course, we cannot stop with listening to only those who we like and know now and agree with and are willing to love. For those of us untouched by war directly, I believe our listening calls us into the spaces that challenges our assumptions and experiences, into an active listening, one that is transformative. I'm reminded of the Palestinian poet Naomi Shihab Nai's words that each moment is an opportunity to create a more just world. And then when we have listened to the places of discomfort and dis-ease, we discover we cease talking and begin speaking from that still small voice, from that connected reality, from that moral clarity. Back on that train returning home, I was wearing my collar, and a young man came up to me. I was in the window seat, and the seat next to me was open on the Amtrak train. And he looked at me and said, "Can I sit down here?" And I said, "Sure." And as he was sitting down, he said, "Can I ask you about that collar?" Oh no, I thought. So few good things will come from this interaction. But there I was, and the shofar had been sounded. One thing led to another, and he tells me how he has made the decision to move from Washington State to Philadelphia because of a passage in Revelations. Whoo, sweet God, I think this is going to be a hard one. He asked me if I'm familiar with that particular piece of scripture. I'm not, but he's happy to tell me. And then he starts to talk to me about alleviating global poverty and how each of us really needs to evaluate what we truly need in this world for the sake of others. And he talks about that his dispute in his church, which was a Mormon community, was that they weren't adhering enough to the Bible, that they weren't willing to give as much as he thought each person needed to give. And then he tells me, you wouldn't believe how many children in the world die of vitamin deficiencies, and how much a small amount of money can transform entire communities. And it really gets you to wondering, he said, what do I need in the face of that kind of poverty? And now I'm sort of intrigued, but still guarded. And then he says, so I just moved to Philly, and my buddy just left Pennsylvania, and you know, it's a swing state. And I think, oh yeah. And he says, so I'm gonna have to vote for my buddy, because otherwise it's a lost vote in a really important election. And I am desperately trying to shift the conversation away from the election, because I know that he's not getting off until Philly, and we haven't even hit Baltimore. And so I start trying to talk about the New York Times crossword puzzle. Can he help me solve it? I am desperately grasping at straws, and that's when he says, you know, so I got to get out and vote. I got to vote for Harris. And my look of shock as my neck snaps toward him surprises him too, and he says, oh, I'm sorry, you're voting for the other candidate, aren't you? And then I really don't know what to say. So I just listen. I have assumed a whole lot of my biblical literalist friend in just 20 minutes. And I was wrong about a lot of it. The next day, I am at the home of a dear organizer who is hosting the memorial of that organizer who died. I'm uncertain of my place in this home because I have just heard that the funeral earlier that day could only be characterized as a form of religious abuse. the things said about the deceased, the ways in which they were disrespected, the call to repentance, and a particular form of religion has created great harm. And there is not only the grief that this beloved person has died far before they should have, but now there are the lacerations from this funeral service. And here I am with this group of artists and law students and organizers and progressives, and I'm just thinking the last thing they want to see is a minister. But my colleague has asked me to come to her home for this gathering, for a healing, and not only to come, but to offer a prayer. I find myself in the foyer of her home, and she's running around trying to get all of the food ready and trying to get all of the details in order, and people have started to arrive, and then I hear her gasp as she sees a painting of this beloved Kay, who is deceased, as she sees a painting that someone has brought, and at the bottom it says, "Rest in power." And it's been placed just in her foyer, almost like an altar. And I can tell that she's been busy doing all of the things that one does when they are preparing a space for mourning and grief. And this has caught her. And there's a little part of me that has that death-denying, grief avoidance of our dominant culture within me. And there's a little part of me that thinks this is a private moment. I'll go in the kitchen and help with something. But the shofar has sounded, and so I stay. And I just put my arm around her, and that's when she just collapses and sobs. Two days later, I'm in the city with an old friend who has lost his job because he refused to go along with unethical practices. And no one knows how principled he was. And he can't tell the story because there's been an agreement signed. And he looks at me and tells me the stories of emails and notes that he has gotten from once upon a time friends who have now assumed the worst of him. And he just shrugs as if there's nothing and everything to say all at once. And I listen to the sound of humility. I am reminded in these days of the story of the man in a location that is about to be engulfed by a forest fire who cries to God for help, and a fire truck arrives and says, "Come on, man, get in the truck, we'll save you." And the man waves them off and says, no, I've called to God. God is going to save me. And then a rescue unit comes in and says, come on, you can hike out with us, we'll help you. And the man says, no, I have called to God to save me. And then a helicopter comes overhead and drops one of those rope ladders down just inches from his hands, and the man waves them away and says, no, go on, I have called to God and God will save me. And the man dies and goes to heaven, and he gets there and he sees God, and he says, God, why did you not help me? I called to you. I had faith in you, every confidence you would save me. And God says, what, are you kidding me? I sent you a fire truck. I sent you a rescue unit. I sent you a ladder that descended just inches from your hands. And I ask in these days, why is there not one policy, one law, one act, or one word, one simple answer to stop this madness, to stop the murders, to stop the fear, to stop the division, the decimation, to stop the war, to stop it all? Why? And the shofar sounds, and my Lebanese friend who tells of the pleas of her family deep in the night and how they are terrified now of their cell phones because anything could be a bomb. And the shofar sounds in the Jewish UU's voice who say, Tikkun Olam is still possible, and who are afraid and who are lonely. And the shofar sounds in the calls for compassion and the stopping of the funding of war machines and bringing home my beloved, and let me rebuild what is left and stop Netanyahu and see me for all of who I am, a life sacred in this universe, a whole world. There are peacemakers all around who are coming as fire trucks and rescue units and ladders just inches from our hands. And they are saying, if you listen, you will hear. You will hear a cry. You will hear a call, an anguished wail. And you will also hear, if you listen deeper, you will hear the labor pains of the peace we could make in this very moment. This is the sound of the shofar. Be broken here before God and your people be cracked. Feel the light and the words come in.
We're going to sing a song called Olam Chesed Yibaneh by Rabbi Menachem Creditor. And one way you can participate in this song is just to sing the response. So I'll sing the first sentence and then you respond like this. La la la, da 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 da. You want to try that? Da 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 da. So we'll do it a few times. The first time I'll sing some phrases in English and then you have the response. And then we'll see as we go along if you can join in even in the English parts that I will sing. I invite you to rise and always possible as we sing a prayer about building the world from love. Da da da. World from love. Na da 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 da. And you must build this world from love. Na da 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 da. And if we build this world from love, na da da da, then God will build this world from love. Na da 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 da. Let's go back to the beginning. I will build this world from love. Na da da da. And you must build this world from love. Na da da. And if we build this world from love, na da da, then God will build this world from love. Na da da. Let's do it one more time. I will build this world from
Beloved, would you take hands with one another? And those joining us online, I invite you, as you're able, to extend your hands toward mine and the light of our chalice. We're determined to keep the circle whole, beloved, in this sanctuary. And so may it go, love as the source, love at the ultimate return, love at the center, as your guide, as your nourishment, as a gift that you offer to all whom you meet in this wonderful, weary world. So may you go with love, beloved. Amen.